Have you ever wondered how to face life's toughest challenges with unwavering strength and purpose? Today, we're diving into a powerful message from the Apostle Peter that could transform your perspective on suffering and adversity. Our story begins in the early days of Christianity, a time of great persecution and uncertainty for believers. The Apostle Peter, once a fisherman turned follower of Jesus, now stands as a pillar of the early church. This is the same Peter who denied Jesus 3 times, yet was forgiven and entrusted with leadership. His experiences have given him unique insight into the nature of suffering and the strength found in Christ. In his first letter to the scattered Christians across Asia Minor, Peter writes words of encouragement and instruction. These believers are facing hostility, discrimination, and even violence because of their faith. It's in this context that Peter delivers a profound message found in 1 Peter 4:1-2. Therefore, since Christ suffered in his body, arm yourselves also with the same attitude, because whoever suffers in the body is done with sin. As a result, they do not live the rest of their earthly lives for evil human desires, but rather for the will of God. But what does it mean to arm yourselves with Christ's attitude? Peter isn't talking about physical weapons. He's referring to a mental and spiritual preparation, a way of thinking that equips believers to face trials with resilience and purpose. To understand this, we need to look at Christ's example. Jesus faced immense suffering, betrayal, mockery, physical torture, and ultimately crucifixion. Yet through it all, he maintained unwavering commitment to God's will. He didn't seek revenge or harbor bitterness. Instead, he forgave his tormentors and remained focused on his mission. This is the attitude Peter calls believers to adopt. It's a mindset that sees beyond immediate pain to the greater purpose. It's an understanding that suffering, while difficult, can refine our character and deepen our faith. Peter goes on to explain that those who suffer in the body are done with sin. This doesn't mean they become sinless, but rather that physical suffering can break the power of sinful desires. When we face hardship with Christ's attitude, our focus shifts from worldly pleasures to spiritual priorities. But how does this apply to our lives today? We might not face the same persecution as early Christians, but we all encounter difficulties. It could be illness, loss of a loved one, financial struggles, or relationship problems. Peter's words challenge us to approach these situations with a different perspective. Arming ourselves with Christ's attitude means 1. Accepting that suffering is part of the human experience, even for believers. 2. Recognizing that God can use our trials to shape us and glorify Him. 3. Focusing on God's will rather than our own comfort or desires. 4. Responding to injustice with love and forgiveness, as Jesus did. 5. Finding purpose in our pain by using our experiences to help others. Peter's call to arm yourselves implies that this mindset requires intentional effort. It's not our natural response to suffering. We need to consciously choose this attitude, relying on God's strength to maintain it. Consider the story of Corrie ten Boom, a Dutch Christian who helped hide Jews during World War II. She was eventually arrested and sent to a concentration camp, where she endured terrible suffering. Yet she chose to maintain Christ's attitude of love and forgiveness. After the war, she even forgave one of her former guards, demonstrating the transformative power of Christ's mindset. Peter's words also remind us that our earthly lives are temporary. By adopting Christ's attitude, we shift our focus from evil human desires to living for the will of God. This doesn't mean we won't feel pain or struggle with hardship. Even Jesus, in the Garden of Gethsemane, asked for the cup of suffering to be taken from him. But ultimately, he submitted to God's will, saying, "Not my will, but yours be done." Luke 22:42. This submission to God's will is at the heart of arming ourselves with Christ's attitude. It's about trusting that God's plan is greater than our immediate circumstances. It's believing that, as Paul writes in Romans 8:28, in all things God works for the good of those who love him. Peter's call to arm ourselves with Christ's attitude is not a call to passivity or resignation. It's an active stance of resilience, hope, and purpose in the face of adversity. It's a reminder that our response to suffering can be a powerful testimony to our faith. As we conclude, let's reflect on how we can apply this teaching in our daily lives. The next time you face a challenge, big or small, remember Peter's words. Ask yourself, how can I approach this situation with Christ's attitude? How can I use this difficulty to grow in faith and serve God's purpose? Arming ourselves with Christ's mindset in suffering doesn't guarantee an easy life, but it does promise a life of meaning, purpose, and spiritual growth. It equips us to face life's storms with courage and hope, knowing that we're following in the footsteps of Christ himself. So let's take up this spiritual armor. Let's face our challenges with the attitude of Christ, trusting in God's plan and purpose. For in doing so, we not only find strength in our own suffering, but become a source of hope and inspiration for others. This is the transformative power of Peter's call, a call that echoes through the centuries, inviting us to a deeper, more purposeful faith.